Euranet Plus Panorama is a weekly review of European news broadcast by our network of EU radio stations.
Welcome back to Euranet Plus Panorama. With some of Europe's more conservative governments challenging the right to safe and legal abortion, the European Parliament wants this right enshrined in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. Since MEPs passed a resolution to this effect at the end of last week, Europe's reproductive rights landscape has continued to evolve, for better or for worse. In a resolution approved by a comfortable majority on the 11th of April, following a debate a month earlier, MEPs called on the European Council to fully decriminalise abortion in line with WHO guidelines. For the European Commission, everyone in the EU should have access to adequate healthcare, including sexual and reproductive healthcare, said Commissioner Elisa Ferreira. Ferreira was speaking on behalf of her colleague Helena Dalli, the Commissioner for Equality, on the 14th of March.
Lack of access to safe and legal abortion can affect several fundamental rights, including human dignity and the right to equality and to the physical and mental integrity of the person. The European Court of Human Rights has recognized the lack of access to abortion services as a violation of the right to family and private life.
MEPs condemned the fact that in some EU countries, doctors and even entire medical institutions are denying access to abortion on the basis of a conscience clause. They called on abortion methods and procedures to be enshrined in the curriculum for all of the bloc's medical students. The vote was largely symbolic, since the resolution is not binding. And with healthcare a national responsibility, member states have a fairly free hand. The right to abortion therefore varies considerably from country to country.
However, when making use of their competencies, member states must respect the rights enshrined in their national constitutions and comply with their commitments under international law.
The Brussels executive believes that sexual and reproductive health rights lie at the core of gender equality. But this notwithstanding, changing the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights would require a unanimous decision from all 27 member states, something that is considered rather unlikely, says AMS. At the beginning of March, France became the first country ever to make abortion a constitutional right. Yet in neighbouring Germany, it is still punishable as a crime, with a few de facto exceptions, which include the first 12 weeks of pregnancy and cases of rape. The question of whether this section of the country's criminal code should be repealed is currently the subject of much debate in Berlin and throughout Germany. On Monday, the 15th of April, a commission appointed by the federal government presented 600 pages of proposed abortion reforms, including fully decriminalising abortions in the first 12 weeks. The debate splits clearly down political lines, but Federal Justice Minister Marco Buschmann from the Liberal FDP is keen to examine the proposals sensitively and objectively. AMS shares his comments, made at a press conference.
It must
certainly be emphasized that this is not just any political issue, but rather that these questions enter the realm of a conscientious decision for many of those involved. I think everyone who has come into contact with this issue knows this. In this respect, particular sensitivity is required here in terms of content and procedure, and also a very objective tone. Because what we don't need are debates that set society on fire or even divide it. We have seen that these issues are capable of dividing a society to such an extent that the result of such a debate is not necessarily social progress, to put it mildly. We also see the heat of the debates in the USA and Poland and in other countries.
Abortion is severely restricted in Malta and, at least up until now, Poland. In their resolution, the EU Parliament specifically called on Poland and Malta to repeal their laws and other measures regarding bans and restrictions on abortion. Just a day later, on the 12th of April, the new government in Warsaw backed plans to bring the country's near-total ban to an end. Prime Minister Donald Tusk explains that this is not a medical issue, but one of human rights, as Polski Radio reports.
This is really about legalising something that relates to women's health and safety, so that a woman knows that the state is looking after her, not attacking her. It is the woman herself, not anyone else, who can and should make decisions about her health, future and motherhood. When I speak about this, I do so with concern and some sadness, because I know there is a lot of public emotion and that sentiments are almost equally divided. It's the same in Parliament, so we probably don't have an easy road ahead.
The extraordinary committee set up to consider the various abortion bills will get to work next week. With 4 draft bills on the table, it will have its work cut out. Not to mention the fact that the country's right-wing president, Andrzej Duda, could prove to be one hurdle too many, as committee chair Dorota Łoboda tells Polski Radio.
I don't know how long this will take. We know, of course, that we have a president who is a firm opponent of legal abortion, so if this reaches his desk, and that's a distant prospect, he has already announced that he will veto it. My job is to get these bills through the committee and bring them to a vote in the parliament. Is there any point? Of course there is. We were not elected by the Polish people to wait for a change of president and do nothing for a year and a half. We have to push this issue forward.
But, as our Belgian colleagues at RTBF report, not even Warsaw's new pro-European coalition government is united on this issue. Meanwhile, Rome has found itself in the centre of an abortion-related storm this week, following the government's legislative proposal to allow pro-life advocates to enter abortion clinics. Abortion was legalised in Italy in the late 1970s. Although Giorgia Meloni's government claims to have no plans to reverse this law, accessing safe abortions is becoming increasingly difficult in the country. Indeed, more than half of Italy's doctors refuse to terminate pregnancies for moral or religious reasons. And this right to conscientious objection is also enshrined in Italian law, as Deputy PM Antonio Tajani stressed during a press conference on Tuesday.
This is a topic that involves everyone's individual conscience. We must guarantee the utmost freedom to everyone. There is an Italian law regarding this, and certainly it cannot be changed.
He went on to say that it is important not to criminalise those who are against abortion, adding, "It is right for everyone to behave according to their own beliefs and conscience." Yet it seems that women seeking abortions do not necessarily enjoy the same right, as opposition MP Cecilia Guerra from Italy's Democratic Party explained during a demonstration against the government's proposal.
This is intended to send a very strong message that women are not able to decide on their own lives, even on such fundamental, painful and challenging things as having an abortion. Wanting to supervise women, to have someone there to set out all the implications of their choices, to try and change their minds, this puts us back several centuries. Remember that Brothers of Italy has even proposed that one should be forced to listen to the heartbeat of the fetus before having an abortion. This is unprecedented in its violence and typical of extremely male, chauvinist and illiberal societies.
In other news, the EU adopted new restrictive measures against Iran at the Special European Council held on Wednesday, the 17th of April. The 27 member states strongly and unequivocally condemned the Iranian attack last Saturday, which saw hundreds of drones and missiles launched at Israel, and called for de-escalation in the region. In an amazing feat of international military cooperation, most of the projectiles were shot down by Israel and allies including the US, France, and even Jordan. Western tempers had been starting to fray with Israel over the long-running siege of Gaza and the resultant famine. Even Washington's patience had been wearing thin. Yet Iran's attack may have given the Israeli government a stay of execution. The United States will continue to provide assistance to both Ukraine and Israel, said Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia, James O'Brien, in a special interview with Bulgarian National Radio earlier this week, at the start of his European tour. O'Brien points out that Russia is the common denominator in both contexts.
I believe people will come to recognize that really these are just two parts of the same battle. Iran is supporting Russia against Ukraine. What Iran gets back from Russia is expertise and money that will help it attack Israel. And so we have to look at these as items that move together.
Estonian security expert Rainer Sachs, who will stand in the upcoming European elections, confirms to Kuku Radio that Russia is definitely interested in Iran being an aggressive opponent of Israel, but that the EU really can help to influence things in the region.
In fact, the European Parliament's greatest strength is the fact that it is directly elected. That gives it moral strength and the ability to make assessments based on a pan-European mandate. No other political structure in Europe has this.
So how much should the EU intervene in the conflict between Iran and Israel? Zhiniu Radias poses the question to Gintautas Mažeikis, a professor at Lithuania's Vytautas Magnus University. He suggests that the bloc is unlikely to take any significant action against Iran, since Brussels tends to prioritise diplomacy.
Diplomatija savo ruožtu reiškia įvairovę ir atskirtį. Tai reiškia, kad, pavyzdžiui, kalbant apie Palestiniečius...
Diplomacy, in turn, means diversity and exclusion. For example, when it comes to the Palestinians, they are clearly distinguished from Hamas. They are not one and the same. Terrorist organizations and their warfare are differentiated from everyday Palestinians who can be supported to save lives. In the same way, Iran is seen not just as a terrorist state, but also as its citizens. Iran is made up of many ethnicities, many different people, including an opposition supported by the European Union, which would like to see democratic change brought about in Tehran. It is doubtful that either MEPs or member states would agree to a threatening operation against Iran.
Join us again next week for another trip around the Euranet Plus network.